Hi everyone, I'm Annette and welcome to my podcast. Welcome back to our Born to Reborn podcast. Today I have with me baby Martin. I bought Martin from a great friend of mine, Kerry Pallier, and she lives over in Western Australia, the other side of Australia from me. And she had him at a doll show over in Western Australia a couple of years back, and I just fell in love with him as soon as I saw him. So when it got to the end of her doll show day and he was still available, I snapped him up, and yeah, he's one of my babies that sleeps in my room in a cot within me, not with me, but in my room. So yeah, he's pretty cool, isn't he? He's really cute with all his beautiful blonde hair there. Really love him. Thanks, Kerry. So anyway, today we're going to do a podcast just talking about heat set and air dry paints. I get so many questions about what the difference is and where to go. Okay, so first we're going to talk about what the difference is. So as it says, heat set paints are heat set to cure. So what that means, the two different paints, you've got heat set paints and air dry paints. The heat set paints are oil based paints and the air dry paints are acrylic based paints. Now the two are both equally great depending on who's using them. I always find that people generally have a preference, and if they do have that preference, it's kind of better for them to stick with their preference, if you know what I mean. So heat set paints, with heat set paints, they are, mixed in a bowl just like your air dry paints, but when we mix them with a product called odorless solvent. Now that odorless solvent that works with the oil base and allows us to put all our beautiful details on our baby. But yes, when you get to the end of a layer or a few layers, that needs to be put into an oven to bake. Now baking it means you're going to cure that paint. It adheres to the baby. Sorry, the sun's all of a sudden really coming in on me. So it adheres and sort of seals and sort of sets into that baby's skin. Now with air dry, it's just like what it says. You put the paint on, so you mix it in a bowl, and when you mix it, you generally mix it with just water. With my paints that Aussie Reborn suppliers sell, you also mix it with a bit of a thinning medium and some blend aid. I'm not sure of the other paints, which we'll talk about soon, what their products come with, because I've never sort of done them myself. But of course, yeah, mixing it with water, and then to cure it, you need to let the baby sit. So you would say put your layer of paint on, and then you'd put it on a drying rack, generally for about 20 minutes, but the longer you leave it, the more time it has to cure. So that's how you cure that. Now, as in preferences, everyone is different. Some people just don't want to work with an oven. They're scared of it. They don't like the heat. It's too hot. They don't know. They feel scared that they might ruin their kit. And also they're afraid of toxic fumes, which has been a chat for a number of years in the reborning community, that the toxic fumes that are released when you're baking a baby from the vinyl generally, that they can be carcinogenic and bad for your health. There's been a number of incidents which have been talked about, people getting cancer from them. I don't think it's ever been proven, but it's obviously something to be concerned about and be aware of. If you're going to bake or paint with heat set paints, then we always suggest you do it in a well ventilated room or garage or veranda. You could wear like a face mask, using protecting things to help you moving forward with your baby. Air dry, of course, there has been no known facts of them being toxic or anything, so a lot of people tend to go to that side for the health side of it. Now here in Aussie Reborn Supplies, I do the online classes, but I also do in-store classes. When I'm doing in-store classes, I generally always start with my students doing air dry paints, because I think that's a good basis to learn on. But I do have to say that 100% of my students have tried heat set paints, and probably 98% of those students have gone forward to only work with heat set paints. The other 2% have decided to stay on air dry just because it works better for them. So it's a bit of a personality thing, what you like better. I do both paints still when I'm painting my babies, but I probably lean a little bit towards the heat set painting. With heat set painting, you normally get a more direct look. So say if you're doing a mottling layer with heat set painting, you'll see it directly go onto your baby. Sometimes, only sometimes, with the air dry babies, it takes a little longer to see it, and sometimes that can be frustrating because you've got this beautiful mottling effect that you kind of see and then you don't see, so it gets a bit frustrating. You have to be very careful when working with air dry paints, because of course, being air dry, they're going to dry, and whatever you've put on your baby is going to sort of start curing really quickly. So if you make a mistake, you need to wipe it off really, really quickly. And you need to keep your paint really, really fine and nice and translucent. If you start getting too thick with your paint too quickly, you can end up with a really dirty looking baby that is not really that realistic. We want to do many, many layers of translucent looking paint that bring up the skin to look realistic. So that takes patience. I do say when working with air dry paint, you should have patience. Don't rush ahead, just bit by bit. This baby I know was heat set. Kerry always worked with the Genesis heat set paints. So I don't know, he's just beautiful. I just love him. But yeah, preference wise, I'd probably lean towards the heat set. But yeah, I recommend them both. And like I said, in my classes, I give my students the opportunity to use both all the time. When I'm setting up my painting table in the morning for them to grab their paints for, there's the heat set on one side and air dry on the other, giving them that opportunity to make their own choices. So with paints, there's been a lot of chat and that over the years, a lot of change. Many of us many years ago were on the Genesis heat set paints, and we all loved them so much, right? And then those paints were discontinued. I know that you can still get those paints at some places. I have seen Anne Maid in Australia. I often see her saying, that her Genesis heat set paints have been restocked and things. So I'm not sure what she is doing to keep them going, but obviously she has some connections and they're still going. I don't know if she's using the mediums, but I'm not a stalker. I don't sort of stalk my opposition. I just see every now and again a post come up on Facebook or something like that. So that's really good to know. Like if you love your Genesis heat set paints, they're still available there. I myself, at Aussie Reborn Supplies, I sell the heat set and the air dry paints, but both are my own brand. Magical Realism heat set paints and Magical Realism air dry paints. They're made in store, they're created, they're easy to work with, and they come with their own instruction booklet. So this one, for instance, is on the heat set paints, and it gives you a really, really easy to follow step-by-step tutorial on making a baby. It's really, really easy to follow. Most people just say it's so simple and so just basic that it's easy for anyone to follow. So that is one great benefit, I believe, when getting paints from me, getting that tutorial. I'm not sure on what the others offer, unfortunately. I didn't research that. Maybe I should have researched that before talking about it. I know Irresistibles have a heat set paint range, I believe, and I do believe there's another brand that maybe Bountiful Babies sell, but I don't know. I haven't heard much feedback about them, but that's not to say there isn't feedback. I just don't generally. I'm always so busy, and I don't really get to see what other people say about other paints online, if you know what I mean. I don't read reviews or stuff like that. So if you know, put in the comments below, because your words might just help someone else to know about a certain paints you've been thinking of getting. Ultimate Fusion have been a big, really, really popular air dry paint. They're also Australian made, and made by a beautiful lady, Narelle, and she owns the company Ultimate Fusion. So you've got Ultimate Fusion there, you've got Magical Realism. Again, with Ultimate Fusion, I'm pretty sure that would come with an instruction booklet, because they're quite on point with everything. And I do say, without kicking myself in the butt, I think Ultimate Fusion are people's favorite go-to paints. Because every now and again I'll see someone asking about air dry paints online on some of the Facebook pages, and you'll get about 60 to 70% of people saying Ultimate Fusion is the way to go, and about 30% saying Magical Realism. And I think to myself, that's a little bit sad, and only because those people haven't had a chance to experience Magical Realism. So how can they know how great they are, right? But that's okay, because I love Narelle and I think she's an awesome lady, and there is enough room in this world for the two paints. I have heard of another air dry paint which was being circulated in America, I think, but I don't know the name of it, I'm sorry. So I'm only going to speak for Magical Realism and Ultimate Fusion. So that's really cool, right? So next, I also wanted to talk about what can you use on what. This is big confusion over the years, and even I get confused. But basically, if you're wanting to put an acrylic on an oil base, or an oil base on an acrylic, the rule is you can put oil base on top of acrylic. Acrylic is water-based, and basically the oil base can go on top of that, right? Okay, so if you've got a baby and you don't know what it's painted with, if you paint acrylic on your oil-based paint, it may not work, it may not cure, and you may end up getting rubs on your baby. I know, it's a little bit of annoying, isn't it? But I do often suggest to all of my customers, if you're wanting to just apply something really fine, like some nail tips or some brows onto your heat set baby, I suggest that you can do the acrylic air dry paints. Air dry paints are really great for touching up, and I think if you're willing to do a touch up, then you'll probably be willing to accept that over time it might rub off. So yes, you're not supposed to, it's not the rule of thumb. The rule of thumb is that the acrylic, which is oil based, is called lean paint, but the oil-based paint is called fat paint, and the fat has to go on the lean, okay? But like I said, just for reborns, and if it's something for yourself and you just want to do a touch-up, those little touch-ups I think would be okay, especially if you're doing some nail tips and then you're putting a gloss varnish over the top of that. That might help it seal, even with lips and brows and things like that. It's just a little touch-up job, and I think it would be fine and wouldn't cause too much trouble. But if you were wanting to do a full layer, let's say you wanted to do a nice red wash on this baby, and this is an oil-based heat set baby, then I would definitely not suggest using the acrylic paints. You need to go back to the heat set paints. And heat set paints, we use a few different kinds of ovens. I always generally suggest people using the New Wave ovens with the ring, which makes it taller, so that gives plenty of room inside that oven. I just always suggested it's a good oven. For me, it's been it never lets me down, and I can feel confident in using it. I've also got a bigger oven. I'll show you a picture of it here. This is like the size of a big microwave, and it's really good for me. I have it in my class because I often get a lot of women making toddlers and things like that, and the New Wave ovens are just too small to make anything bigger than, like, say, a big size Reborn baby. And even that, like, I've got Tallulah, I think it's called at the moment, and using this one in the oven, I can only bake the head and arms, and then I have to do another bake for the legs because she's just too big. Okay, so that's that. Okay, now I think I touched on the base of everything to do with air dry and heat set paints. If you have any questions about these paints, please, send me a message below, or if you have any advice for people wanting to use them, because there's a lot of people out there that are thinking to get into the art and they're a bit confused about where to go. Classes are a really good start too. They guide you through using any base paints really. So that would be my suggestion there. So before we go any further, I wanted to show you the update on Podcast Baby. Nearly finished the paint work on it. I've done the caramel layer, I've done the nails and everything. Now I'm just sort of going to go and do some touch-ups on things that I might want to touch up. He's not put together, so I'm just showing you how he's going this. Hopefully the sun isn't being too bothersome. Yeah. And so then, of course, I have to get to the hair painting. So don't forget, if you do want to start getting tickets in the Podcast Baby, they are available now. So really cool. So thank you for watching today. Don't forget, if you have a question or of a certain podcast you'd like me to talk about, they can be to do with the artistry of reborns. They can be to do with the therapy of reborns, or the collecting of reborns. There's a few things we can talk about, or maybe something a little bit unrelated to reborns, but maybe slightly related. Just put me a message down below in the comments so I know, and then I can make a special podcast just about your question. So thanks for watching today, guys, and I'll see you next week. Bye.